Hello, we're excited to share with you another great resource that will help you grow spiritually in 2021. Today we're with Forest Antemesaris, and he's going to tell us about first century faith today.
So, Forrest, why don't you take just a second, introduce us to yourself and to the work that you're doing?
Sure. So, as has been previously stated twice, my name is Forest Antemesaris. I live in Auburndale, Florida, which is about 30 minutes south of Orlando, and preach with the Orange Street Church of Christ there in Auburndale, Florida. And here to talk about first century faith today. If you want me to get into some of the background of that, it's just a platform for encouraging articles and podcasts and whatnot, started by a good friend of mine, Hiram Kemp, and I, back when we were in preaching school in 2015.
So why don't you, Forrest, kind of speak to kind of the purpose of first century faith today, kind of maybe break down some of the title to us and explain kind of why you selected that title and how you got to where you got.
Yeah, sure. So first century faith today, the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints, Jude 3, obviously came to us in the first century. That's when, the New Testament was completed. That's when the gospel first was started to be preached. But that today is important. And that kind of goes to the purpose of the website. The purpose of the website and the content of the website is to try to show that though our faith is ancient and though our faith has roots all the way back in the first century, it's relevant for today. And it's applicable today. And, when we open up our Bibles, it's not just, something that was relevant for people 2,000 years ago. It has, real lasting impact in our lives and should. And the Bible can help us in the problems we face today. So that's kind of where the title comes from. And we kind of have like a threefold goal of encouraging Christians, edifying the church, and encouraging preachers, equipping preachers. And that's something that Hiram and I are real passionate about, especially Hiram with the equipping preachers. So we try to, cover all the bases. If you're an elder, if you're a deacon, if you're a preacher, if you are a member, if you're trying to be more evangelistic, if you are struggling with doubt or fear or trying to get your prayer life going or trying to get into some habits of reading scripture and stuff like that, that's kind of what the goal of the website is. It's not necessarily always, doctrinally deep stuff, but the goal really is to be practical and to sort of encourage faithfulness, in the 21st century.
So, Forrest, what is your favorite type of content to provide, or the most beneficial part of the content that you provide for your audience?
Yeah, so I'd say it's kind of a twofold answer to that. As somebody who's kind of like creating content, my favorite thing, one of my favorite parts about the website is I'm able to write stuff and discuss stuff and research stuff that I need help with. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the articles I write, isn't coming from a place of like looking around the church and being like, man, y'all need to straighten up. Here's an article. You know what I mean? It's really like thinking about myself and like, what are things I struggle with? What are some things that I wish there was like a practical article about that maybe there isn't, that I can write really for myself, but then, I'm not like one of a kind fully, other people share the same issues and struggles that I do. So releasing stuff like that. Like recently, I wrote an article on, why Christians shouldn't be fearful. And that was one thing in 2020 that really, just with everything going on, I found myself feeling fearful. And I was like, I don't think this is what God has in store for me. Like, this isn't what God wants me to feel like right now, And the second part of that answer, of the content that I like or think is beneficial, Hiram, who is, my partner in this endeavor and kind of the co-operator of First Century Faith Today, co-writer, he writes a lot of things that are really, really practical, but in kind of like an outside of the box way. So, it'll be things like 5 things every Christian should remember this Sunday. And it's just about 5 things about worship that sometimes we forget, about assembling that sometimes we forget. He writes a lot of articles like that are just really practical. And even if it's not, it might not be something I'm struggling with, but it's a good reminder for me. Because, there's all kinds of things that if we're not mindfully thinking about them, they can kind of just leave our head. And there's a lot of stuff we have like that I don't write, that I get to consume, from him. And it's always just helpful and practical and good reminders.
So, Forrest, rumor has it you've got a book coming out. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're still in the works of getting everything squared away. But Hiram and I, we're co-authoring a book that really it goes book by book through the New Testament. And it's like almost like a brief introduction to each book. So for each book of the New Testament, you're going to see like what are the major themes, what's the background, what kind of setting was this written to, when was it written, who was the original audience, kind of an overview of the book, a significance of the book, what do we get from James, what do we get from First Peter, what's kind of the overarching themes and stuff like that for each book of the New Testament. And that should be coming out, we're not exactly sure, but definitely in 2021, probably late spring or summer 2021. And it's actually going to be published by Robert Hatfield at the Light Network. And so be on the lookout for that. lightnetwork.tv is their website. But that's actually, if you go to the website right now, First Century Faith Today, there's not a lot of new content, and it's because we've been writing that book. And books take a while to write, is something I've learned. So, but like I said, we're done with the writing, and we're excited to get back into producing articles more frequently.
So, as kind of two side notes. One, in the coming weeks of this series, we're actually covering the Light Network as a resource you should know. But also, Forrest, I wanted to ask in writing this book, who do you most hope it is beneficial to? Do you have a certain narrow audience?
Yeah, so I think this book really is good for any member of the church, especially, it's not necessarily written for Bible class teachers and preachers, though I think they could get something from it. I really picture it as, let's say you're going through your daily Bible reading plan and you're starting Galatians. Okay, before I break into Galatians, let me just read a couple pages on some of the background, some of the things to keep in mind, stuff like that. So kind of just as you go through the New Testament, or maybe your preacher preaches a sermon from First Peter, and you're like, man, First Peter, a lot going on there. But what if I just zoomed out and got the big picture of First Peter? After worship or whatever, just read the chapter on First Peter. And I think it's not scholastic, it's not really too heavy, and there's a practical parts in each chapter of, okay, here's like the take-home message of First Peter or whatever the book may be.
So you basically are looking at having a context, hey, here's the context of this book, here's the context of that passage, or what's going on broader picture-wise.
Yeah, so almost like if you were just like zoom out, like if you were flying in an airplane over the book of Galatians, what are some of the things you would see instead of like a verse by verse, exposition of it, just like the 30,000 foot view.
Well, that's awesome. Very excited about that book. Very thankful for First Century Faith Today and all the good work you and Hiram are doing. I guess my final question would be, how do the people who watch this video benefit from First Century Faith Today? Should they subscribe to your website so they get, new content weekly, or should they just, rely on that search bar anytime they have a question and go and type in their question on the search bar and see if you have something along it? Maybe speak to that.
Yeah, great question. So, I think it's something, I don't want to overstate the value of it. Obviously, I'm not trying to, toot my own horn or anything like that. But definitely, if you go to firstcenturyfaithtoday.com, there's, buttons to subscribe to the newsletter, and you'll get an update about every new article that drops. And also, like you said, go into the search bar, and, if you have a question about something, or maybe you think, how could I do this better? We might have an article on it. But I think even more helpful than that, when you go on the website, the big feature of the website is it's kind of broken down by topic. And, whether it's things about culture or politics, or whether it's things, about prayer, things about Christian living. We do have some doctrinal articles as well, and kind of just looking at it that way. But I think, it's just part of a steady diet, blogs and websites like this from people who put stuff out there, whether it's radically Christian or whatever it may be, and just being able to be edified and encouraged, even not on a Sunday or a Wednesday. I think that's, kind of the way I would look at it, just kind of sprinkling it into your diet.
All right. Well, Forrest, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you and all the work that you and Hiram are doing for First Century Faith Today. We have enjoyed our time together. And for those of you who are watching, thank you so much for watching this and going through this series with us as we highlight some resources that you should know. I hope that you'll go over to his website, give it a look, and hopefully it will be a benefit to you as you live for the Lord. Thank you so much. And until next time, God bless.